They disowned me at 20 weeks pregnant. It happened at the dinner table, over the clink of silverware, with a demand to be practical. Give up the baby, or give up the family name, my mother said, her voice light enough to cut glass. They didn't know I'm the head of compliance at a listed firm, or that my fiancé is the quiet heir to a financial dynasty. That night, holding my belly, I decided, if they chose public humiliation, I would answer in public, I am Sloan Mercer, 29 years old, head of compliance for Northvale Systems, and tonight, I am the specimen under the glass. The restaurant is a cube of glass and cold air perched on the edge of Wesley Wharf. The city lights of the harbor glitter like a carpet of broken diamonds, but inside, the light is muted, expensive, and yellow. It turns the heavy silverware on the table into a collection of surgical tools. I can feel the chill of the floor-to-ceiling windows through my silk blouse, a cold that seeps right into the bone. Across from me, my mother, Catherine Mercer, adjusts the single pearl at her throat. Her movements are economical, precise. To her right sits my father, Thomas, his gaze fixed on the harbor, as if calculating the shipping tonnage. Between them, my older brother, Dylan, idly spins the stem of his untouched water glass, a small, bored smile playing on his lips. They are the perfect Mercer triptych, controlled, wealthy, and utterly passionless. We are here, ostensibly, to discuss my future. Sloan, my mother begins. She doesn't raise her voice. She never does. Her voice is a thin, silver wire, the kind used for cutting clay. We need to address the optics of your situation. I wait. In my line of work, you learn that the first person to fill a silence often loses. 5 months pregnant, she continues, placing her linen napkin in her lap. And unwed, the optics are, frankly, terrible. My father slides a thin leather-bound folder across the polished mahogany. It stops perfectly, just shy of my bread plate. There is no letterhead. There doesn't need to be. This is a disgrace, Sloan, he says, his voice a low rumble of disapproval. He hasn't looked at me yet. He's still appraising the harbor. You've made this family a laughingstock. I open the folder. Inside, on heavy cream-colored bond, is a single-page document. At the top, in stark, severe font, are 2 words, family standards. You have 2 options, my mother says, as if discussing catering choices for a gala. It's all very practical. I read the text. It's not a legal document, not in the way I understand them. It's a social contract, written with the cold finality of a corporate restructuring plan. It demands I rectify the situation. The terms are simple. Option A. I terminate the pregnancy. In return, I will be sent to a wellness retreat in Switzerland for 3 months, after which I can return to my life. The incident will be forgotten, scrubbed from the family ledger. Option B. I give the baby up for adoption immediately upon its birth. The placement will be handled discreetly by the family's attorneys. I will sign a non-disclosure agreement. My indiscretion will be forgiven, though not forgotten. And if I choose neither? I ask. My voice sounds too loud in the curated hush of the restaurant. Now my father looks at me. His eyes are the color of a winter sky. There is no neither. You either give up the baby, or you give up the family name. The ultimatum hangs in the air, thick and toxic as exhaust fumes. Give up the family name. This means the Mercer Trust, which has funded my life. It means the penthouse apartment, the driver, the social standing that opens every door. Furthermore, he continues, tapping a manicured finger on the table, you will tender your voluntary resignation from Northvale Systems by morning. Of course, Northvale. My father doesn't just sit on the board. The Mercer Family Fund is one of its largest institutional investors. My role as head of compliance, I see now, was never about my competence. It was about having a Mercer inside, an auditor loyal to the bloodline, not the shareholders. My pregnancy isn't a moral failing to them. It's a breach of fiduciary duty. I am no longer a reliable asset. I am a liability. A conflict of values, we'll call it, my mother adds, signaling the sommelier. It's cleaner that way. My hand instinctively goes to my abdomen, a small, firm curve under the table. The fabric of my dress is taut. Inside, there is life. I don't need to feel for a kick. I have the data. I slide my phone from my purse, keeping it in my lap. I unlock the screen. The wallpaper is an image from this morning's appointment, a grainy, black and white universe, and at its center, a perfect, flickering heartbeat. The physician's note is still open. Fetal heart rate, 152 BPM, strong and steady, all benchmarks nominal. 152 BPM, a steady, relentless drumbeat of existence that these three people want to silence. My fingers trace the outline of the phone screen, the glass cold against my skin. I remember the smell of the ultrasound gel and the overwhelming, amplified whoosh, whoosh, whoosh that had filled the small, dark room. It was the only sound in the world. Honestly, Sloan, Dylan says, finally looking up from his glass. He gives a short, dismissive laugh. You were never really cut out for motherhood. You're much better at writing policy. He leans back, satisfied with his little jab. He, the chosen heir, the one who skated through business school on a cloud of family money while I memorized SEC regulations. I remember the time, 2 years ago, I flagged one of his venture projects for creative accounting. I wrote a very clear policy on interfamily loans that had him furious for weeks. This, then, is his revenge. Diminish my greatest act of creation to a procedural error. My thumb hovers over the record icon on my phone. It would be so easy to capture the sterile cruelty, the contractual nature of their love. But I don't press it. I slide the phone back into my purse. Recording is messy. It's emotional. It's discoverable in a way that creates complications. What I am doing is far more potent. I am a compliance officer. My mind is a living vault, a permanent, unalterable log. I am not recording. I am witnessing. I am committing every word, every micro-expression, every pause to an internal ledger. I will remember the exact vintage of the Sancerre my mother is ordering. I will remember the glint of my father's Patek Philippe as he checks the time. Bored. I will remember the precise cadence of Dylan's laugh. This isn't a family dinner. This is a deposition, and my memory is the evidence file. I look up from the folder. My gaze travels from my mother's expectant face to my father's stony profile, to my brother's smug indifference. I push the leather folder back to the center of the table. I won't sign. My voice is quiet, but it cuts through the clinking of distant plates. My father's jaw tightens. A small, dull flush creeps up his neck. My brother's smile falters. My mother is the only one who doesn't react. She simply lifts her new glass of wine, the white liquid catching the yellow light. She takes a long, slow sip, her eyes holding mine over the rim. Very well, she says, setting the glass down with a barely audible click. From this moment, you are no longer a mercer. The allowance is terminated. The apartment keys must be returned by noon tomorrow. The car service is canceled. You will be removed from all family accounts and legal instruments. She pauses, takes another sip. You are, for all practical purposes, no one. Do not contact us again. The finality is absolute. It's as simple as closing a position, writing off a bad debt. I don't cry. I don't argue. Crying is a waste of data. Arguing is an admission of weakness. I stand up. The movement is slow, deliberate. My chair makes a loud, grating scrape noise on the polished floor. A vulgar sound in this temple of quiet money. All three of them flinch. I reach into my purse and pull out my own wallet. Not the one linked to the Mercer accounts, but my personal one, earned with my Northvale salary. I retrieve my black Amex card and place it firmly on the table, next to the bill the waiter had discreetly left. The dinner is on me, I say. I pick up my trench coat from the back of the chair. I don't put it on, I just hold it. For a second, I look at the three of them, frozen in their tableau of judgment. They are already figures in the past, artifacts in my evidence file. I turn and walk away. I feel the eyes of the other diners on my back, but I keep my head high. My footsteps are silent on the thick carpet. As I pass through the heavy glass doors and into the cold, sharp air of the wharf, I don't look back. The reflection in the glass shows me a woman, alone. Her hand resting on the slight, defiant curve of her stomach. The scraping sound of my chair is the last word. I didn't go to a hotel. I went to a secure sublet I've kept under a separate LLC for 2 years. A sterile, high-rise apartment registered to a shell corporation I use for compliance testing. The Mercers taught me to value privacy. I just learned to apply it to them. My personal laptop, the one Northvale's IT department doesn't know exists, booted up in the dark. By 5 a.m. Monday, I was logged into the Northvale system via a secure multi-jump VPN. The disowning was the social severance. The corporate one began at 8:02 a.m. An email landed in my inbox. Subject: Confidential. Performance Review and Improvement Plan. It was from Janice Riley, our VP of Human Resources. Janice, who I'd shared coffee with just last week, discussing Q4 compliance training. The document attached was a masterpiece of weaponized bureaucracy. It wasn't a standard PIP. It was a legal trap, couched in the language of supportive management. It began with vague accusations: a noticeable decline in objective decision-making, misalignment with core corporate values, and failure to maintain necessary professional boundaries. Then came the specific clauses, terms I had never seen in my 7 years at the company. Clause 4A. Employee must proactively insulate the workplace from all external family influence, ensuring that personal familial disputes do not impact corporate governance or optics. Clause 4B. Employee must agree that any requests for accommodation, including those related to pregnancy or other personal medical conditions, will be evaluated solely on the basis of business necessity, superseding any non-statutory policy preferences to preserve the company's image. They had twisted it. Pregnancy-related accommodations were now non-statutory policy preferences. Family influence was a pretext to punish me for my father's actions. They were building a case that I was the one creating the conflict, simply by existing in my current state. A second email followed at 8:15 a.m., this time directly from Janice's personal address, not the automated HR system. Subject: A path forward. Sloan, this is difficult for everyone. The attached PAP is a formality we must pursue. However, several members of the executive team feel it would be best for all involved, and for your own professional image, if you were to proactively request an immediate, unpaid leave of absence to focus on your personal wellness. We could frame it as a sabbatical. It would allow you to step away before this situation becomes more public. Think about it. Let's protect your reputation. J. It was a threat, wrapped in the language of concern. Resign, or we will destroy you on paper. They wanted me to go quietly, to take the unpaid leave so they could cut my system access, starve me out, and fill my role before I ever came back. They wanted me to sign my own exit. I didn't reply. I opened my admin console. As head of compliance, I have read only universal access and full admin rights over all policy documentation. It's my job to ensure our policies are fair, legal, and correctly implemented. My first stop, the Employee Handbook, Master File. I ran a differential analysis between the live, public-facing version on the employee portal and the internal master document stored on the secure server. There it was. In the master document, Section 512, Paid Parental Leave, clearly outlined 16 weeks of fully paid leave for a primary caregiver, a policy I myself had helped draft and get approved 2 years ago. I toggled to the public-facing version, the one every employee saw. Section 5.12 was gone, not amended, deleted. The numbering of subsequent sections had been automatically adjusted. To any new employee, to any current employee checking their benefits, it simply did not exist. This wasn't just unethical. This was active, malicious policy falsification. A publicly traded company cannot maintain 2 sets of books, and that includes its policy liabilities. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I pulled the system's changelog for that specific file. My breath caught. Timestamp, Sunday, 10:43 p.m. User ID, J. Riley, action, modify, section 5.12, delete, IP address, a residential IP in Wesley, where Janice lives. Timestamp, Sunday, 10:44 p.m. User ID, J. Riley, action, publish, public portal. She had done it from home, on a Sunday night, less than 4 hours after I walked out of that restaurant. This was a coordinated attack, executed with astonishing speed. My father must have called her the second I left. At 9:30 a.m., a third email arrived. This one was a notification from the company's anonymous whistleblower hotline, a system I manage. Subject, FWD, formal complaint, ethics violation, S. Mercer. The forwarded text was brief. An anonymous complaint has been filed alleging that Sloan Mercer, head of compliance, is using her position and authority to improperly shield her fiancé, Mr. Bennett Vale, from required third-party vendor scrutiny. This appears to be a severe conflict of interest. Bennett, they were pulling him into it, Bennett, whose family wealth was old, quiet, and vast, had never done a single dollar's worth of business with Northvale Systems. He had no contracts. He was not a vendor. He had no required disclosures. The accusation was pure fiction, designed to paint me as corrupt and compromised. It was the ethics charge they needed to justify the PP. I moved faster. First, I went into the policy admin panel. I placed an immediate, indefinite compliance hold on the entire employee handbook and all related HR policy documents. This action, which only my credentials could execute, froze all editing capabilities. Not even Janice could touch it now. The log would read, hold initiated by S. Mercer. Reason, pending internal audit. Second, I opened the full server log for the last 72 hours. I captured everything. Janice's Sunday night edits, the IP address, the login-logout times. I took high-resolution, time-stamped screenshots of the differential analysis, showing the two versions of the handbook side by side. I documented the anonymous complaint, tracing its submission IP to a proxy server, sloppy, but intended to look anonymous. I saved the PIP and Janice's email as pristine MSG files, preserving the metadata. I bundled it all into a multi-layered, password-protected zip file. Then, at 10:15 a.m., the final piece of the trap appeared in my calendar. Subject, urgent, executive committee, briefing time, 2:00 p.m. today. Location, boardroom, 12A, video link. Attendees, CEO, CFO, General Counsel, VP, HR, J. Riley, COO. Purpose, to address critical ethics concerns regarding Sloan Mercer and her continued fitness for her role. My stomach tightened. They weren't even giving me a day. They were moving to execute. I scanned the attendee list again, the executives, Janice, the executioner, and then, at the bottom, under observers, non-participating, Catherine Mercer, board representative, Mercer Family Fund. My mother. It was the single most flagrant violation of governance I had ever seen. A board member's representative, my own mother, who had personally disowned me 36 hours prior, was being invited as an observer to an internal HR meeting about my employment. It was a kangaroo court. It was an execution. Her presence was designed to intimidate, to ensure the executives fell in line and followed the family's wishes. They were treating a public corporation like a private piggy bank, a feudal estate. My rage was cold and perfectly clear. It wasn't hot. It was sharp, like a shard of ice. I opened a new document. I did not write an emotional plea. I did not beg for my job. I drafted a 7-page legal memorandum. To Mark Jenkins, General Counsel, from Sloan Mercer, Head of Compliance. Date, today's date. Subject, formal notification of conflict of interest. Policy falsification, and retaliatory action. I structured it perfectly. Page 1. Executive Summary, a bullet-pointed list of the immediate threats to the company, including document falsification and improper board influence. Page 2. The Conflict of Interest, detailing Janice Riley's actions, the PIP, the sabbatical offer, in direct temporal proximity to my father's demands. I detailed Catherine Mercer's inclusion on the 2:00 p.m. meeting invite as a gross breach of employee privacy and established corporate governance. Pages 3 to 4. The evidence of falsification. I embedded the screenshots, the 2 versions of Section 512, the changelog, the user ID, the IP address. I cited the specific SEC regulations regarding public disclosures and internal controls, which this action had just violated. Page 5. The pretextual complaint. I dismantled the anonymous complaint about Bennett Vale, stating clearly that he has no financial relationship with Northvale, and positioned the complaint as a retaliatory fabrication. Page 6. The retaliation. I framed the entire sequence, the PAP, the offer of unpaid leave, the falsified handbook, as a direct and illegal retaliation for my pregnancy, which is a protected status. Page 7. Demand. I demanded an immediate, independent, third-party investigation into HR's actions and the board's improper influence. I stated that I would not be attending the 2:00 p.m. meeting, as it was a compromised and hostile environment, but would make myself available to an independent investigator. I attached the encrypted zip file. I read the memo twice for precision. It was cold. It was factual. It was undeniable. I hit send. The digital receipt confirmed it was delivered to Mark Jenkins's inbox at 11:32 a.m. I waited. For 5 minutes. There was nothing. Then, my inbox chimed. A reply from Mark. Subject. Formal notification. The body of the email contained 2 words. Note received. Not thank you, not I'll look into this, not we need to talk. Note received. It was the sound of a steel door slamming shut. It was the response of a man who had already chosen his side. The general counsel, the one person legally required to protect the company from this exact kind of malfeasance, was siding with the board. He was part of the trap. I leaned back, my hand resting on my stomach. The silence in the apartment was absolute. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted me silent. They wanted to build a paper trail so thick with my failures that if I ever tried to sue for wrongful termination, I would look like a disgruntled, corrupt employee. They wanted to bury me in fabricated ethics violations. I looked at the 7-page memo on my screen. I looked at the encrypted file of evidence. They thought this was an internal HR matter. They thought this was a family dispute they could clean up with corporate tools. I saved a copy of the memo and the evidence file to a new, encrypted thumb drive. They want me to go quietly. I want a record. I want a public, permanent, unalterable record, and I will get it. I just need a different kind of courtroom. I didn't go back to the sublet. At 10:00 p.m., I was on the road, leaving the city's electric glare behind. The 45-minute drive to Grayford Ridge was a descent into a different kind of world. The streets were unlit, winding through old-growth forests. The gates to Vale House were not polished steel or gilded spikes. They were 9 foot tall, 100-year-old wrought iron, and they opened without a sound. The house wasn't a glass and steel monument to ego. It was a sprawling, low-slung manor of pale gray stone, softened by cascades of ancient ivy. Every window glowed with a warm, steady light. It looked less like a house and more like a university library, a place built to withstand time. Bennett Vale was waiting for me on the stone steps. He wasn't in a suit. He wore a worn, heavy wool sweater and jeans, his hands shoved into his pockets against the chill. He didn't rush toward me. He just waited as I got out of the car, the gravel crunching under my shoes. He took my single overnight bag from my hand, his grip firm. Then he just put his arm around my shoulders and pulled me in, his chin resting on the top of my head. I felt the solid warmth of him, the smell of wood smoke and clean laundry. "You're safe," he murmured into my hair. He walked me inside. The door was solid oak, 3 inches thick, and it closed with a quiet, definitive thud, the sound of a vault locking. "We don't do ultimatums here. Sloan," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the stone entryway. "Ever." The front hall was vast, but not grand. It was lived in. It smelled of beeswax, old books, and the faint, sweet scent of a wood fire. A woman was standing in the archway of a library that branched off the hall. She was tall, with her salt and pepper hair pulled back in a simple, elegant twist. She wore dark wool trousers and a cream-colored cashmere turtleneck. There was no jewelry, save for a simple, modern gold watch. This was Eleanor Vale. She had Bennett's eyes, a clear, intelligent blue, and a gaze that felt like it could weigh molecules. She didn't look like my mother, who was all sharp angles and polished surfaces. Eleanor Vale looked solid, like the house. "Sloan," she said. Her voice was deeper than I expected, resonant and warm. "You look exhausted. Sit down." It was a statement, not a request, but it felt like an act of kindness. Bennett guided me into the library, and I sank into a deep, worn leather armchair near the fireplace. The heat washed over my face. I hadn't realized how cold I was. Bennett returned a moment later with a heavy ceramic mug. "Cacao," he said. "Not hot chocolate, real cacao. It's bitter, but it's grounding." He was right. It was dark, thick, and not sweet. I wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the warmth seep into my fingers. Eleanor Vale sat in the chair opposite me. She didn't offer apologies or platitudes. She didn't say, "I'm so sorry for what you're going through." Instead, she slid a thin, bound document across the coffee table between us. It was professionally printed, spiral-bound, like a quarterly report. The title read, "The Vale Arcadia Group, Whistleblower Protections and Governance Recourse Playbook." I stared at it. "Bennett forwarded me your memorandum to Mark Jenkins," Eleanor said, her voice calm and even. "The screenshots of the policy falsification, the 2:00 p.m. meeting invite, the note received reply. It was, from a compliance standpoint, a perfect piece of work." "They're burying me," I said, my voice sounding small. "They're building a case to fire me for cause." "They are," Eleanor agreed, nodding. "But this is not just about you. Sloan, you need to understand what's been happening in the background." She leaned forward, steepling her fingers. "Vale Arcadia, our family's investment arm, has been conducting quiet due diligence on Northvale Systems for the last 6 months. We were evaluating a significant position in their upcoming convertible bond offering. This was news. Northvale was looking for a new round of capital. We look for long-term, stable investments," she continued. "Good governance, strong internal controls, and ethical leadership. Northvale always had a red flag for us. The disproportionate influence of the Mercer family fund and your father's reputation. But we also had a green flag. You." "Me?" "You, Sloan Mercer, head of compliance. You have a reputation in this industry for being sharp, unbendable, and ethically rigid. We assumed your presence was the firewall, the control that balanced out your family's influence. We were willing to invest because you were there." She paused, and her expression hardened slightly. "But your memo, it changes the entire calculation. It proves the firewall isn't just breached. It's being actively dismantled from the inside by HR, with the full knowledge of the General Counsel and the direct, improper influence of the board. The anonymous complaint, the falsification of the handbook. This isn't just a family dispute spilling over. This is evidence of systemic rot. It's a material disclosure of governance failure." She looked at me, and her gaze was not pitying, it was analytical. "Your situation, as terrible as it is the final data point we needed. It's the drop of water that proves the levee is broken. So, this brings me to a very important question. What do you want?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what is your objective? Do you want revenge? We can provide you with the finest litigation team in the country. We can fund a private, wrongful termination suit that will tie your family and Northvale in legal knots for the next 5 years. We can bleed them in discovery. Or, she said, tapping the cover of the playbook, do you want to fix the system? The question hung in the air. Revenge. The word tasted like ash. It was what my family understood. It was loud and messy, and, in the end, it changed nothing. It was just a different kind of family standards. Fix the system. That was my job. That was what I was built for. I want to fix the system, I said, and my voice was stronger now, warmed by the fire and the bitter cacao. I want the paid parental leave policy reinstated. I want every employee who was affected by its removal to be made whole, and I want the people who did this held accountable, not by a lawsuit, but by the very governance rules they tried to break. I looked her straight in the eye. I'll let the truth do the rest. A slow, genuine smile spread across Eleanor Vale's face. It transformed her. Good, she said. That is a much more interesting objective. Vale Arcadia does not engage in backroom deals or petty, hostile maneuvers. We don't bribe. We don't threaten. We don't blackmail. We use the rules. We use daylight. We use governance. She flipped open the playbook. Your family and their enablers at Northvale are used to operating in the dark. They think a corporation is their private fiefdom. We are about to remind them that it is a public trust, with obligations to its shareholders, its creditors, and its employees. What's the plan? I asked, feeling my compliance brain click back online. We don't act illegally, Eleanor stated. The plan is entirely legal and based on established market rules. First, starting tomorrow morning, our fixed income desk will not be buying the new bonds. Instead, we will be quietly acquiring Northvale's existing senior notes on the secondary market. We will acquire enough to become a major creditor. I saw it instantly. The debt covenants. Precisely, Bennett said, picking up the thought. Their covenants are standard. They require transparent accounting, adherence to all material laws, and forbid any action that would constitute a material adverse change, falsifying corporate policy, committing potential wire fraud by doing so, and opening the company to a massive class action discrimination lawsuit. I'd say that qualifies. As a major note holder, we have the right to call for an immediate test of those covenants, Eleanor said. But we won't do it alone. That looks like a power grab. Instead, we use your memo. Tomorrow, our general counsel will formally contact the SEC's whistleblower office, and they will also engage Kenswick and Rowe. My blood ran cold. Kenswick and Rowe. They were the most ruthless independent auditors on the planet. They weren't just accountants. They were forensic investigators who were brought in to dismantle frauds. We will engage KNR through the whistleblower channel to conduct an immediate, independent audit of Northvale's HR and compliance protocols, citing your evidence, Eleanor said. The board cannot refuse. To refuse an independent audit after a formal whistleblower complaint, the market would tear them apart. They will be forced to accept. She closed the playbook. Your family chose to go public with cruelty. Sloan, we will answer with governance. The simplicity of it, the cold, clean logic, was breathtaking. They weren't fighting with my family's weapons. They weren't using shame or threats. They were using a floodlight. We sat for a moment in the quiet of the library. The only sound was the fire and the turning of a page as Bennett sorted through a file. He pulled out another document, this one thinner, and handed it to me. This is also for you, he said. His voice was softer. It's from me, not the group. I had my personal attorney draft it this morning. I looked at the cover. Prenuptial agreement. A cold spike of fear shot through me. I thought of the family standards document. I thought of the clauses, the demands, the ultimatums. Bennett, Just read it, Sloan, he said gently. It's not what you think. My hands were trembling slightly as I opened it. I am trained to read contracts. My eyes scanned the clauses, braced for the traps. I saw the standard clauses: separation of property, protection of the Vale Arcadia Trust, delineation of assets. It was all standard. But then I got to the sections on children and personal conduct. I read it and reread it, searching for the words that weren't there. I looked up, my throat tight. "Where is it?" "Where is what?" he asked. "The silence clause," I whispered. "The non-disparagement, the confidentiality agreement, the conduct unbecoming clause. Where are the terms?" "There aren't any," he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Sloane, I am never going to ask you to be silent. Not about me, not about my family, not about anything. This document isn't a contract to control you. It's a contract to protect us, you and our child, from the outside world. It establishes an irrevocable trust for the baby. Effective today. It secures your personal assets. It's a shield, not a cage." And that was when I broke. The sob that I had held back in the restaurant, the tears I had refused to shed in the sublet, the sterile rage I had felt at my desk, it all dissolved at once, in the face of this simple, profound decency. It wasn't a wail. It was a silent, agonizing collapse. The tears streamed down my face, hot and fast. I wasn't crying because of the cruelty. I was crying because of the kindness. My family had given me a contract that demanded the eradication of my child and my voice. Bennett Vale had just handed me one that guaranteed the future of both. I cried for the 5 months of fear I had been carrying alone. I cried because, for the first time in my entire life, I had been treated not as an asset, a liability, or a child, but as an adult, a person with agency, who was trusted. Eleanor stood up quietly. "I'll see to your room," she said, and slipped out of the library, giving us privacy. Bennett didn't try to hold me. He just moved from the ottoman to sit on the floor by my chair, resting his arm on the armrest, a silent, steady presence. He let me cry until the storm passed, until all that was left was a shuddering exhaustion. He handed me a linen handkerchief. "We'll get married next week at the courthouse," he said quietly, "or next month, or next year, or not at all. The trust is active either way. This is your choice. Sloane, all of it." I wiped my eyes and nodded, the paper crinkling in my hand. I felt the baby kick, a strong, reassuring thump against my ribs. Eleanor returned, her expression unreadable but gentle. She looked at the agreement in my lap, and at my red-rimmed eyes. "They treated you like a child. Sloane," she said, her voice firm. "That was their fatal mistake. We will treat you as what you are, an expert, and our partner. Now, you should rest. Tomorrow, we begin." I folded the prenup. It felt heavier than any policy document I had ever written. "In public," I said. "It was a promise. We didn't sleep. We worked. The Vale House Library, with its scent of old leather and wood smoke, became a command center. Bennett, Eleanor, and I, we weren't drafting a lawsuit. We were designing a corporate intervention, built on their own rules. The plan was not a complex, multi-pronged attack. It was a single, high-tension steel cable. We would attach it to the foundations of North Vale's governance, and we would tighten it, minute by minute, until the entire corrupt structure either snapped or was forced to realign. We called it Project White Light. No shadows, no backroom deals. Just pure, agonizing, inescapable transparency. Step 1. Activation. At 7:00 a.m. on Tuesday, I bypassed my VPN and logged into the North Vale system from a secure Vale terminal. I didn't go to my admin panel. I went to the employee portal. I clicked the link I myself had implemented 2 years ago. Anonymous Ethics and Compliance Hotline, hosted by a third-party, arm's-length provider in Delaware. I filed a formal whistleblower report. Subject: formal complaint, governance breach, policy falsification, and hostile work environment. I attached the full 7-page memo I had sent to Mark Jenkins. I attached the encrypted zip file, the change logs, the screenshots of the 2 handbooks, the email from Janice Riley offering us sabbatical, the 2:00 p.m. meeting invite with my mother's name on it, and most importantly, Mark Jenkins's 2-word reply. Note received. The moment I hit submit, the system automatically generated an undeletable, time-stamped notification. It went not just to HR, but, as required by the protocol I wrote, to the CEO, the General Counsel, and the independent chairman of the Audit Committee. The trap was set. They could no longer pretend this was an informal HR dispute. It was a formal, documented allegation of securities-level misconduct. They were on the clock. Step 2. The financial leverage. While I was logging my complaint, Eleanor was on a secure line to her head trader in Geneva. The order was not emotional. It was mathematical. Acquire Northvale Systems Senior Notes. QSIP 66589XAB3. Quietly, secondary market. I want the 15% threshold by noon. London time. My family, in their arrogance, always focused on equity. They thought they controlled the company because they were the largest shareholders. They forgot about the debt. By 11 a.m., it was done. Vale Arcadia was now, officially, a major creditor of Northvale Systems. They now had a legal, financial standing to demand adherence to the debt covenants. And we had just documented a flagrant breach of the covenant requiring lawful and transparent governance and accurate disclosure of material liabilities, which a falsified, discriminatory parental leave policy absolutely was. Step 3. The stage. The audit committee chair, a man named Henderson, was properly panicked by my 7 a.m. filing. At 11:05 a.m., Vale Arcadia's general counsel reached out to him. The call was polite. They introduced themselves as new, significant note holders. They expressed deep concern over the whistleblower report that had just been filed. They didn't threaten. They suggested. They suggested that, to restore faith and proactively manage the unfortunate optics. I smiled when I heard they'd used my mother's word. The CEO should host an emergency company-wide all-hands meeting, a transparency day, to reassure everyone that Northvale had nothing to hide. Desperate to control the narrative, Northvale's leadership agreed immediately. They scheduled it for Friday and vowed to prove their commitment to transparency. They agreed to Vale's suggestion that it be live-streamed to all registered investors. Step 4. The independent auditor. This was Eleanor's masterstroke. The trap wasn't just the meeting, it was the timing. Vale Arcadia, as a major creditor, formally requested, and the panicked audit committee agreed, to retain an independent investigator to review the whistleblower claims. They didn't send a law firm. They sent Kenswick and Rowe. K&R are not accountants. They are corporate executioners. They are the forensic auditors you bring in when you suspect a company is a house of cards. The key was the deliverable. K&R were instructed to release their preliminary findings not in a quiet report to the board, but via the official investor disclosure wire. The release was timed for exactly 10:30 a.m. on Friday, 30 minutes into the Transparency Day livestream. Under SEC Regulation FD, Fair Disclosure, material findings must be released to all investors at the same time by scheduling the report release during the livestream. Eleanor guaranteed the executive team would have no time to read it, spin it, or bury it. They would be forced to read their own indictment, live, in front of every employee and every investor. Step 5. The data. My role was not to be the hysterical pregnant victim. I was the head of compliance. I was the expert. I spent the next 2 days in the library, building a 12-slide presentation. Title: Policy Integrity as a Core Asset. I mentioned no names. I did not mention my mother, my father, or Janice Riley. I did not use the words disowned, family, or ultimatum. The deck was cold, clean data. Slide 3, our stated values: honesty, integrity, people first. Slide 4, Policy 5.12, paid parental leave, version A, internal master file, approved by board. Slide 5, Policy 5.12, version B, public employee portal, as of Sunday night. Slide 6, the change log, user ID 9011, J. Riley, action, modify, delete, timestamp, Sunday, 10:43 p.m. User ID 901, J. Riley, Action, Publish, Timestamp, Sunday, 10:44 p.m. Slide 7. The Financial and Human Impact. A graph, 42 employees in the past 60 days who had accessed the portal, seen no policy, and accepted unpaid leave, 42 families. Slide 8. The legal liability, citing the specific state and federal statutes violated. It was irrefutable. It was the truth, formatted as a file. Step 6. The positive alternative. This was Bennett's move. While Northvale was being exposed for policy theft, the Vail Foundation would, on the same day, announce a new $100 million industry-wide initiative, the Vail Family Fund for Paid Parental Leave. The press release was already drafted. It was a masterpiece of positive PR, designed to support families across the tech and manufacturing sectors. It contained one specific, devastating line. We believe in supporting companies that support their people. To that end, we are formally inviting Northvale Systems to be the inaugural partner in this new standard of corporate responsibility. They weren't just exposing Northvale's failure, they were offering them a very public, very expensive path to redemption, right in the middle of their humiliation. Checkmate. Step 7. The Governance Coup. On Thursday afternoon, Mark Jenkins, the note-received general counsel, received a draft resolution from Vail Arcadia's legal team. It was polite. It was professional. It stated that if the K&R audit confirmed the preliminary findings of material policy misrepresentation and governance failure, the covenant breach, the note holders would have no choice but to vote for a full-scale review and restructuring of the company's executive governance and board oversight. It was a perfectly legal, bloodless threat to fire the CEO, the general counsel, and the entire HR leadership. Step 8. The audience. This was my only personal request. I used my still-active corporate credentials to send 3 final calendar invites to the Transparency Day all-hands. To Thomas Mercer, Catherine Mercer, Dylan Mercer. Subject: Invitation. Northvale Systems Transparency Day. Stakeholder Session. I invited them not as board members, but as family stakeholders, the very term they had used against me. I knew their arrogance. They wouldn't be able to resist a front-row seat to what they assumed would be my public execution. They would come to watch me burn. I copied the invite to the General Counsel's office, on the record. Step 9. The contingency. I was still 5 months pregnant. The stress was a physical weight, a constant, low-grade humming in my veins. My OB-GYN, a Dr. Bennett had arranged, visited me at Vail House. She was stern. "The baby is strong," she said, pressing the cold Doppler to my stomach, filling the room with the whoosh, whoosh, whoosh of 152 BPM. "But you are not. Your blood pressure is high. This level of cortisol is dangerous." She forbade me from being at the Northvale offices. I would present via secure video link from the Vail House Library. Bennett took it one step further. He had a black Mercedes sedan, piloted by his security chief, idling in the driveway. The route to the best neonatal intensive care unit in the state was already programmed. "If your blood pressure tops 150/100, he said, his voice absolute, "you are in that car. The presentation stops. The plan stops. We stop." It was the first time I realized I could lose something more important than a job or a lawsuit. It was the first time I felt the solid ground of his protection. Step 10. The rehearsal. Friday morning, 8:00 a.m. I stood in the library, the fire crackling, the large video screen humming to life with the Northvale logo. I was wearing a simple dark blue maternity dress, professional, severe, and undeniably pregnant. Eleanor sat in the leather chair, playing the part of the hostile board. "And what," she asked, her voice sharp, "is the point of all this, Ms. Mercer? Why should we care about one employee's grievance?" I looked into the camera lens. I rested one hand on my stomach, a gesture that was both protective and defiant. I practiced the only line in my presentation that wasn't data. "Because," I said, my voice steady, "integrity is our only asset, and motherhood isn't a compliance breach." Eleanor nodded once. It's time. The first move was theirs. And it was so perfectly arrogant it was almost beautiful. It arrived on Wednesday morning, a formal calendar invitation from Janice Riley's executive assistant. Subject: Invitation. Opening remarks. Northvale Transparency Day. The body of the email was slick with the veneer of corporate inclusivity. Sloan, in the spirit of our upcoming Transparency Day, the executive committee would be honored if you would set the stage as our opening speaker. Given your long-standing role in shaping our corporate culture, we can think of no one better to speak on this session's chosen theme: ethics, family, and values in the modern enterprise. We have you scheduled for a 10-minute voluntary address to lead the company. We feel this would be a powerful healing gesture for the entire Northvale community. Please confirm. It was a guillotine disguised as a bouquet. They were offering me the ultimate bait. They knew I had filed the whistleblower complaint. The automated notification proved it, but they believed they had me cornered. They assumed I was a hysterical, spurned woman who would act one of two ways. I would refuse, confirming their narrative that I was uncooperative, emotionally compromised, and not a team player. I would accept, and they would get to watch me, live, in my visibly pregnant state. Either break down or deliver a weak, emotional plea, which they could then frame as unstable and disruptive. The theme was the cruelest, most elegant part of their trap. Ethics, family, and values. They were handing me a loaded gun in a room full of mirrors, daring me to shoot. They expected a personal, messy tirade. I sat in the Vale Library, the fire crackling in the hearth, and typed a one-word reply. Confirmed. 20 minutes later, the inevitable follow-up landed. This time, my mother, Catherine Mercer, hit reply all from her personal, board-affiliated email address. The message was sent to me, to the CEO, to Janice Riley, and to the General Counsel. Subject: Invitation. Opening remarks. Northvale Transparency Day. Sloan, darling, this is wonderful news. It is so very brave of you to choose this moment to speak. We are all looking forward to hearing your perspective. Your father and I wouldn't miss it. C. The PR smooth language was flawless, brave, the word a doctor uses before a painful procedure, the word a society figure uses to describe a less fortunate acquaintance. It was a public pat on the head, positioning her as the magnanimous matriarch, graciously allowing her wayward daughter a moment to repent. It painted me as fragile, emotional, and pitiable. It was, in its way, a masterpiece of social violence. The public narrative was being cemented. An hour later, Bennett slid his phone across the desk to me. Dylan had just posted on his LinkedIn a professional headshot of himself, smiling, with the Northvale logo faint in the background. So proud of the way Northvale Systems is leaning into transparency, he wrote. True corporate leadership means supporting all members of your team, even when they're navigating personal challenges. The Mercer family has always been, and will always be, a proud supporter of these core values. The likes and comments poured in. Class act, Dylan. Well said. Values are what matter. Relatives, family friends, and Northvale middle managers all chimed in, eager to align themselves with the winning side. I took a screenshot of the post. I then took the entire email chain, Janice's saccharine invitation, my confirmed, and my mother's brave reply, and bundled them. I opened a new, secure message to the lead investigator at Keswick and Rowe. Subject: FWD. Additional evidence for K&R file 902B. Northvale Internal Comms. Mr. Harris, please add the attached email chain and social media post to the file. They may be relevant to your investigation regarding undue board influence and the creation of a hostile work environment. Regards, Sloan Mercer. Every word they wrote to self-aggrandize, every public statement they made to paint their false narrative, was now a formal exhibit in their own indictment. They were gleefully building my case for me. My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. Desk just confirmed. 16.2% of senior notes secured. We can force the meeting of note holders at will. The financial trigger is live. I felt a small, cold sense of calm. The Mercer's power was social, a performance. The Veil's power was structural, a mathematical certainty. The next day, Thursday, the AV logistics email arrived. It was a technical document, not a social one, a run of show. It listed the equipment. 7 full broadcast HD cameras, 1 stage center podium cam, 2 executive row fixed cams, 3 mobile floor cams, 1 wide-angle audience cam, full streaming package for investor portal. They weren't just hosting a meeting, they were producing a live television event. They were setting up 7 cameras to capture my humiliation from every conceivable angle. I hit reply. I copied the general counsel and the head of AV. AV team, thank you for the specifications. Pursuant to the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, Title I and Title III, please ensure real-time, human-transcribed closed captioning, CART services, for the entire duration of the live stream. This is to ensure full accessibility for all employees and investors who may be deaf or hard of hearing. Please confirm this accommodation will be in place. Sloan Mercer, Head of Compliance. It was a perfect legal box. As Head of Compliance, it was my job to make this request. As a public company, they could not, by law, refuse it. Mark Jenkins, the General Counsel, replied in under a minute, confirmed. He had no choice, but he had also just legally ensured that every single word spoken, by me, by the CEO, by anyone who stood up, would not just be broadcast, but would be transcribed into an immediate, permanent, and searchable text log. There would be no ambiguity, no misinterpretations. There would only be the record. The hours ticked by. By Thursday night, the plan was locked. Every trigger was set. Every contingency was mapped. I was in the library, staring at the 12 slides of my presentation, the numbers and timestamps blurring. 42 families, 10:43 p.m., user ID, 9011, J. Riley. Sloan. Bennett's voice pulled me out. I hadn't heard him approach. He was standing by the desk, holding a slim, plain white envelope. He didn't offer a pep talk or a hug. My mother and I have been handling the strategy, he said, his voice quiet. This is from me. He handed me the envelope. It wasn't a letter. I slid out the contents. It was a photograph, still slightly warm from the high-resolution printer. A new ultrasound, from an appointment I'd gone to that afternoon while he and Eleanor were on calls. The image was clearer this time, a perfect curved spine, a tiny distinct hand with 5 nascent fingers, floating in the dark. At the top of the image, the text was sharp, HR 154 BPM, GA 21W 5D. A strong, steady heartbeat, growing. That's the other bait, Bennett said, his thumb gently brushing the back of my hand. It's not for them. It's for you. It's the anchor. Don't look at their faces in the front row. Look at this. This is the only thing in that room that's real. I nodded, unable to speak. He was right. My family thought the bait was ethics and family. But the real bait was the truth, the data, the 154 beats per minute that I would anchor myself to. Friday, 9:00 a.m., 1 hour to go. I stood in the guest suite and got dressed. I had considered and discarded a dozen options. I did not choose black. It was too funereal. I did not choose a soft maternity dress. It was too vulnerable. I chose armor, a maternity suit in a pale, quiet gray, the color of granite, the color of a clear winter sky. It was perfectly tailored, the jacket cut with a single button that fastened just above my belly, making my pregnancy not a liability to be hidden, but a simple, unassailable fact. I wore no jewelry, no glittering engagement ring to distract or signal a new alliance. This was my fight, as a professional. On the lapel of the gray suit, I affixed one small silver pin. It was my old employee service pin, given to me at my 5-year anniversary. It read, Policy is people. I was ready. I walked into the library. Bennett was there, with Eleanor. The large screen was live, showing the Northvale auditorium filling up. The audio was muted, but I could see them, the employees filing in, the buzzing energy. And then, the mobile camera panned to the front row. There they were, my father, Thomas, staring straight ahead, his face a mask of stone, my brother, Dylan, looking bored and checking his phone, and my mother, Catherine, adjusting her silk scarf, smiling faintly as she chatted with Janice Riley. They looked perfectly, devastatingly confident. They had come to watch the show. My phone, resting on the desk, lit up, a new text message from Eleanor. "Speak plain, numbers will do the rest." I sat down. I clipped the small, broadcast-quality microphone to my lapel. Next to the pin, Bennett placed the ultrasound photo on the desk, just to the left of my laptop, just out of my camera's view. I took a deep, slow breath, feeling the air fill my lungs, a conscious act of claiming space. And then, right on cue, as if it had heard the call to battle, I felt it. A sharp, definitive, rolling kick against my ribs. I placed my hand on the spot, a small smile touching my lips for the first time that day. I looked straight into the green light of the camera. "We're ready," I said. My screen flickered and came alive. 10:00 a.m., the Northvale Systems Transparency Day broadcast. I was not in the auditorium. I was a digital presence, a high-definition image broadcast from the Vale Library. On my monitor, I saw the main feed, the sprawling, packed auditorium at Northvale headquarters, 7 cameras, just as they'd promised. David Shaw, our CEO, stood at the podium, his face glistening under the stage lights. He looked like a man trying to read a eulogy he didn't write. "Today," he began, his voice artificially resonant, "we reaffirm our core commitment to transparency, to integrity, and to family." As he said family, the main camera panned, as if on cue, to the front row, the VIP section. There they were, my father, Thomas, his profile rigid, staring at the stage, my brother, Dylan, idly checking his watch, and my mother, Catherine, dressed in a sharp, cream-colored suit, offering a small, supportive smile to Janice Riley, who sat beside her. They looked like patrons at an opera, waiting for the tragedy to begin. They were so confident. They were here to watch me be brave. "And now," Shaw continued, "to set the stage for our discussion on ethics and values, our head of compliance, Sloan Mercer." My name, the feed cut from Shaw's sweating face to mine. My image filled the 40-foot screen behind him. I was calm. The gray suit was immaculate. The policy as people pin was a small, silver glint on my lapel. My hand rested, just visible on the feed, on the curve of my stomach. "Thank you, David," my voice said, crisp and perfectly clear, filling the auditorium. The silence was absolute. I could feel the collective inhalation of 500 employees. "In the spirit of transparency," I said, "I have shared my screen. Let's begin with the data." I hit the first key. Click. My 12-slide presentation took over the main screen. The theme was not ethics and family. The title was Policy Integrity as a Core Asset. Click. Slide 2. "This is a simple audit," I said, my voice acting as a calm narrator. The slide showed 2 columns, side by side. Column A, SEC Filing, 10Q, Employee Handbook, Master File. Section 512, Paid Parental Leave, 16 weeks, fully paid, approved by Board. Column B, Public Employee Portal, Live Version, Section 512, Section deleted. A low murmur started, a ripple of sound. I saw people lean forward. I saw my father's head snap up. "As you can see," I continued, "there is a material discrepancy between our filed disclosures and our active employee policies." Click. Slide 3. "All corporate policy changes must be documented. This is standard governance. This is the audit log for the policy change. The screenshot filled the screen. It was undeniable. User ID 9011 J. Riley. Action: modify, delete. Section 5.12. Timestamp: Sunday, 10:43 p.m. Action: publish. Public portal. Timestamp: Sunday, 10:44 p.m. The murmur in the room grew louder. I saw Janice Riley, on camera, go perfectly, bloodlessly white. Her smile was gone, frozen in place. My mother's hands, which had been resting in her lap, clenched into fists. Click, slide 4. This was not a clerical error. It has a human cost. A single number appeared on the screen. It was massive. It was bright, arterial red. 42. 42, I said, letting the word land. 42 employees, 42 families in the last 60 days who accessed the handbook, saw no paid leave policy, and were subsequently forced to take unpaid leave or resign. That was when the whispers became a roar. It wasn't shouting, it was a wave of shocked, angry noise. The admin view of the livestream chat, which only I could see, exploded. Where is HR? 9011 is Janice. Oh my God. I was one of them. I took unpaid leave. This is illegal. I'm sending this to my lawyer. They lied. On the main feed, David Shaw was staring at Janice Riley, his face a mask of dawning horror. He had been played. Mark Jenkins, the general counsel, was on his feet, his face purple. He was striding toward the podium. "Ms. Mercer," he shouted, his voice picked up by the stage mic. "This is not the appropriate forum. You are discussing confidential HR matters." My mother was on her feet, too. She wasn't shouting. She was staring at me, her face a rigid mask of fury, whispering venomously to my father. I ignored them all. I leaned closer to my microphone, and my voice dropped. It became the quietest, heaviest thing in the room. "This is not a family story," I said. The entire auditorium went silent, straining to hear. "This is not a personal grievance." I looked directly into the camera. "This is a governance story." Mark Jenkins reached the podium, motioning wildly to the AV booth. "Cut her feed! Cut her microphone! This meeting is—" Ping! The sound was high, electronic, and deafeningly loud. It was the system-wide, all-employee Priority 1 notification chime. Ping! It echoed through the auditorium as it hit every laptop and every phone simultaneously. Ping! Ping, 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 ping. 1,000 heads snapped down. 1,000 phones lit up. The time was 10:30 a.m. exactly. On my screen, the live stream chat went completely, apocalyptically insane. Keswick and Rowe, it's on the investor wire. It's public. The auditors. Oh my God. It's real. Read the alert. Read it now. Mark Jenkins froze. David Shaw looked up, his face ashen. The AV technicians, responding to the public news feed, did exactly what they were paid to do. They pushed the breaking alert to the main screen. My slides vanished. The screen went black, and then white text appeared. The text of the K&R preliminary report, scrolling for everyone to see. The closed captioning I had demanded was now transcribing the company's own death warrant. Preliminary findings. Keswick and Rowe, LLP. Northvale Systems whistleblower complaint. Allegations of intentional policy manipulation and falsification of employee liabilities. Confirmed. Evidence of improper board-level influence on internal HR matters. Confirmed. Recommend immediate independent review of GC and HR functions. It was an execution. Live, on 7 cameras. Mark Jenkins just stood there, his mouth open, reading his own indictment. Janice Riley looked like she had physically collapsed into her chair. Into this profound, horrified silence, a new voice emerged. A man in the 3rd row stood up. He was in a simple, dark suit. He looked like an accountant. He was Arthur Geist. "Mr. Shaw," he said. His voice was not loud. but a floor cam and a microphone found him instantly. He was calm. He was polite. "My name is Arthur Geist. I am a representative of the Vale Arcadia Group, a significant holder of North Vale's senior notes." Mark Jenkins's head snapped toward him. The word Vale hung in the air, heavy as lead. "Mr. Geist," Shaw stammered, "this is clearly not the time." "On the contrary," Geist said, with the same mild tone, "this is precisely the time, given the preliminary findings from Kenswick and Rowe, which have just been publicly confirmed. We must formally declare North Vale Systems in material breach of its debt covenants, specifically Section 8.4, regarding lawful corporate conduct and the transparent disclosure of material liabilities." My father, Thomas, stood up. He, unlike the others, understood exactly what this meant. This wasn't HR. This was finance. This was the end. "Now, see here," my father began, his voice a low growl. Geist simply spoke over him, still addressing the CEO. "Therefore, pursuant to our rights as noteholders, we are formally calling for an immediate, binding vote of the board and creditors on a resolution. This resolution will restructure the company's executive governance, including the immediate suspension of the general counsel and the entire C-level HR function, pending a full forensic audit. A coup, clean, legal, public. And that is when my mother finally, completely lost control. She lunged past my father. Her face, twisted with a rage I had never seen, filled the main camera feed. "This is a setup!" she shrieked. Her voice, no longer the precise, glass-cutting instrument, was raw and guttural. It cracked. "This is a personal vendetta. This is a setup. She is a liar. She—" The AV technician, instinctively, put us in a split screen. My mother, ugly with rage. On the left, me, calm, pregnant, and watching, on the right. I let her scream for 1, 2, 3 seconds. I let the entire world see the face of the family standards. Then I spoke. My voice was quiet, forcing the room to go silent to hear me. "This is not a setup, Catherine." She froze, her mouth still open. "It's a standard." Mark Jenkins, galvanized, began waving his arms. "Security! Security! Remove these people. The observers. They are not employees. Get them out of here. This is a private—" "It's not private, Mark," I said, my voice cutting him off. "It's on the investor wire. It's on the record." 2 uniformed security guards, faces grim, were walking down the aisle. They looked terrified, but they went to the VIP row. "Mr. Mercer, ma'am, you are here as non-participating observers. You must leave." My father, his face the color of wet cement, turned without a word. Dylan scrambled after him, but my mother stood her ground, staring at my image on the giant screen, her eyes promising a fate worse than death. "You," she mouthed, as the guard took her arm, "are finished." The camera followed them, the 3 Mercers, the family stakeholders, escorted out of the auditorium like common trespassers. The feed cut back to me, alone on the giant screen. The auditorium was a tomb. In the front row, 3 VIP chairs sat empty. They were black holes in the center of the room. They looked like spilled ink, spreading. I hit the key. Click. My final slide appeared. The red number. 42. "Now," I said into the silence, my voice ringing with the clarity of a bell. "Let's talk about restitution." The auditorium was a vacuum. The only sound was the faint electronic hum of the screens. The only image my slide with the red 42 and the 3 empty gaping chairs in the front row. The camera panned from the empty seats to the frozen, ashen face of our CEO, David Shaw. He stood by the podium, his notes scattered. He looked at the K&R report, now a fixed image on the monitor. He looked at the empty chairs where the Mercers had been. He looked at the sea of 500 stunned, silent, furious employees, and he saw his career hanging by a single, fraying thread. He grabbed the podium, his knuckles white. He was a man with only one path left. "Effective immediately," he said. his voice a hoarse, shaky thing. "Janice Riley is suspended from all duties. Pending termination, Mark Jenkins is suspended. Effective immediately. The entire senior HR leadership team is on administrative leave." It was a total capitulation. "Kenswick and Rowe," he continued, reading their name off the screen like a death sentence, "will be given unrestricted access to conduct a full, independent, forensic investigation of this entire matter. We will be transparent. We will cooperate. We will fix this." The room was still silent, processing the coup. This wasn't just a win, it was an annihilation. My voice, calm and clear, filled the void. "Thank you, David. That is the necessary first step." Every eye snapped back to my image on the giant screen. "What has been demonstrated today," I said, "is a catastrophic failure of governance, but a failure is also an opportunity. It is an opportunity to replace what was broken with something that is built to last, a new standard. To that end, I would like to yield the floor to Anya Sharma, the executive director of the Vail Foundation." A woman I had never met, but whose name was on our plan, stood up from the fifth row. She was sharp, dressed in a dark blue suit, and held a tablet. A floor cam found her instantly. She was the picture of calm, positive energy. "Thank you, Ms. Mercer," she said, her voice warm but projecting power. "What you have all witnessed today is a breakdown. But Ms. Mercer is correct. It is an opportunity." She advanced to the aisle, a woman taking command of the space. "My organization, the Vail Foundation, believes that strong families are the bedrock of a strong economy," she said. "For too long, corporate policy has treated parental leave as a liability, not an investment. We are here to change that. Today, the Vail Foundation is formally announcing the launch of the $100 million Vail Family Fund for Paid Parental Leave, an industry-wide initiative to support companies who commit to supporting their employees." The air in the room changed. It shifted from shock and anger to something else: confusion, hope. "We are building a new standard," Anya said, her voice rising with a practiced, inspirational cadence. "We will partner with companies to build, fund, and celebrate paid leave policies that work. And today, in the spirit of Transparency Day, we are formally inviting Northvale Systems to be our inaugural partner, to recommit, publicly, to the values you have always claimed to hold." It was devastating. It was brilliant. It was a lifeline and a judgment, all in one. The live stream chat, which had been a river of rage, paused. Then. It was a flood, 1,000 clapping hands emojis, washing over the screen. At the very bottom of the investor feed, a small ticker had been running. NVS, 8.14%. NVS, 8.20%. NVS, 8.30%. It stopped. It flickered. NVS, 7.50%. NVS, 7.10%. The market, the great amoral beast, had seen the poison, seen the antidote, and had rendered its judgment. The stock was turning positive. The internal host, a woman from marketing named Sarah, who had been sitting shell-shocked at the side of the stage, finally found her voice. She fumbled with her microphone. "Sloan," she said, her voice thick with emotion. The camera cut back to me. "Sloan, my God, do you have any final words?" This was it, the moment. I let the silence stretch. I let them see the calm, gray suit. I let them see my hand, resting on the undeniable curve of my pregnancy. I looked past the lens, at the ultrasound picture taped to the desk, 154 beats per minute. I brought my eyes back to the camera. "I just have one thing to say," I said, my voice perfectly level. "I am 5 months pregnant. Motherhood is not a liability." The words hit the room like a physical shock, and then the sound came. It started in the back, a single person, standing, clapping, then another, then a dozen. Within 10 seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet, The camera panned, shaking, across a sea of 500 employees, investors, and analysts, all standing, all applauding. It was a roar, a thunderous, deafening, human sound. They weren't clapping for the stock ticker. They weren't clapping for the Vail Foundation. They were clapping for the truth. They were clapping for the 42. They were clapping for me. In the library, I watched, my face still. I let them clap. On stage, the remaining board members, the ones not named Mercer, were in a panicked huddle. The audit committee chair, Henderson, the man who had first received my complaint, broke from the group. He strode to the podium, waving for silence. The board is in agreement, he shouted over the applause. We accept the note holders' resolution. We will cooperate fully with Kenswick and Rowe. The applause began to die down as he spoke. And he said, turning to look directly at my image on the screen, his face grim but resolute. The board formally recognizes and thanks our head of compliance, Sloan Mercer, for her courage and her unwavering integrity in upholding our standards. The host, Sarah, was openly weeping now. She took the microphone one last time, her gaze fixed on me. Sloan, she said, her voice breaking. Thank you. Do you have any message? For your family? The question landed. The entire room went dead silent. This was the gossip. This was the drama. This was the family part of ethics, family, and values. This was the moment they were all waiting for. My mother's shriek of, "This is a setup," still echoed in their ears. My face filled the screen. I held the camera's gaze. I shook my head. Once, a small, sharp, negative motion. No, I said, my message is not for them. My message is to the employees. I leaned in, as if sharing a confidence with all 500 of them. To the 42 employees and their families who were impacted by this, I said, my voice low and sharp. Check your email, right now. You will have your leave back, with interest. As I spoke those words, in the library, I hit the enter key on my laptop. The command executed, a pre-written, legally vetted email, co-signed by the acting CEO and the newly empowered audit committee chair, was released from the HR system. Subject: an apology and a correction. Your paid parental leave rights. It went to all 42 employees. It detailed the immediate reinstatement of the full 16-week policy. It detailed the process for full, retroactive back pay, and it included a taxable interest payment, a bonus, for the distress and hardship caused. The live stream chat, which had been quiet, lit up one last time. I got it. I got the email. It's real. The back pay. It's real. Holy shit. They're paying interest. Sloan. Thank you. Thank you. Sloan. I looked at the camera. I did not smile. I simply nodded. Once, a small acknowledgement. Done. I reached forward, my hand steady. My fingers found the mute icon on my control panel. I pressed it. The small red live light on my microphone blinked and went dark. My broadcast was over. I leaned back in the deep leather chair, away from the glowing screen. The adrenaline began to drain, leaving a vast, humming quiet in its place. I closed my eyes, just for a second. In the silence of the library, I felt it, a strong, sudden, rolling kick, a thump-thump against my ribs, a perfect, final punctuation, the end. I clicked the mute button. The feed from the Northvale Auditorium vanished, replaced by the quiet, dark reflection of my own face in the monitor. The library at Vail House was silent. It was a silence so profound, it seemed to have a physical weight, pressing in on me. The only sound was the crackle of the fire in the hearth and the distant, polite thud of a heavy door closing somewhere in the house. The adrenaline, the cold, sharp focus that had held me rigid for 72 hours, drained away all at once. It was a physical sensation, like a suit of armor dissolving, leaving me shivering and impossibly heavy. My hands, which had been rock steady on the keyboard, began to tremble violently. I looked at them, detached, as if they belonged to someone else. "Sloan." Bennett's voice, close. He hadn't been in the room during the broadcast, giving me the space I needed. Now, he was at my side, kneeling by the chair. He didn't touch me, not yet. He just put a heavy glass of water into my shaking hands and wrapped his own around them until the trembling stopped. "You're done," he said. It wasn't a congratulations. It was a statement of fact. "You can let go now." I drank the water. It was cold. I felt it all the way down. Eleanor Vale entered the room, followed by a woman with a kind, professional face and a black leather bag. "This is Dr. Aris," Eleanor said, her voice soft but practical. "She's been waiting." I hadn't been told she was coming. It was another contingency, another quiet, structural piece of support I never had to ask for. "Let's check on our other participant," Dr. Aris said, her voice a calm, neutral baseline. In the quiet of the library, with the firelight warming the leather-bound books, I laid back on the sofa. Bennett held my hand. The doctor's hands were warm. She worked efficiently, taking my blood pressure, listening to my heart. 140/90, she murmured. "Still high, but it's coming down. The cortisol storm is passing." Then, she pulled out the Doppler, the room filled with a familiar, amplified sound. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. It was the only sound in the world. It wasn't the ping of a legal notification. It wasn't the shriek of my mother or the roar of an auditorium. It was the sound of a living truth. 154, Dr. Stretches said, smiling. Steady as a drum. She didn't seem to mind the fireworks one bit. "She's perfectly fine. Sloan, you're both fine." I closed my eyes, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, for the first time since I sat at that cold glass table in Wesley Wharf, I exhaled. It was a deep, shuddering breath that emptied my lungs completely, releasing a tension I hadn't even known I was still holding. When I opened my eyes, Dr. Aris was gone. Eleanor was sitting in the chair opposite me. She had a new document in her hands. My body tensed. A reflex. Another contract. Another set of terms. Eleanor seemed to read my mind. "This is not a contract, Sloan," she said quietly. "It is a declaration." She placed it on the table. It was not the thin, cream-colored bond of the family standards. This was heavy, archival quality paper, bound in dark blue, with a simple, elegant title, The Vale Arcadia Education and Wellness Trust. "This is for your child," Eleanor said. "It's already executed. It's irrevocable. It is registered to her, under seal, until she is 18. I opened it. My eyes scanned the legal language. It wasn't a prenuptial agreement. It was a one-way endowment. It guaranteed, fully and completely, all medical care, all security expenses, and a full 4-year university education at any institution in the world, tuition and board, prepaid and inflation-adjusted. I flipped to the end, my compliance-trained eyes searching for the fine print. I was looking for the clauses, the non-disparagement, the conduct requirements, the optics clauses. There was nothing. There were no conditions. There was no silence clause. "The Vales do not buy silence. Sloan," Eleanor said, as if stating the obvious, "we invest in people. This document ensures your child will grow up with one thing that no one can ever hold over her head: her own independence, her privacy, her education, and her health are hers. They are not conditional, ever." I ran my fingers over the paper. It was a shield. The exact opposite of the document my parents had tried to make me sign. The one that offered me security in exchange for my child's life. This one guaranteed my child's security. No exchange required. Bennett sat down on the ottoman, next to my feet. He looked at the trust document, then at me. "When you're ready," he said, his voice low and steady. "I'd like to marry you, in the courthouse, just us." He paused. "Or we can wait, or we can not. It's your ledger. Sloan, You decide when it's balanced. I looked at him, at this man who had offered me a shield instead of a cage, and I knew the answer. After, I said, my voice still rough. After what? After the 42, after they get their checks, after I know, for a fact, that every single one of them has been paid in full, when the real ledger is balanced. Bennett smiled. It was a small, warm thing. After the ledger, then, my phone, dark on the side table, lit up. It was a text from an unknown number. My heart hammered. A sudden return of fear. A threat. A reporter. I opened it. The message was short. From unknown number. This is Ana Ramirez. I was in the shipping department. I have a 3-month-old. I took unpaid leave last week because HR said the policy was gone. I just got the email and the wire transfer confirmation. I don't know what you did, Ms. Mercer, but thank you. Thank you for keeping your word. I stared at the words, thank you for keeping your word. Not thank you for saving me. Not thank you for the money. Thank you for keeping your word. It was the epitaph of a compliance officer. It was the highest praise I could ever have earned. The first of the 42. The account was being settled. I sat up, the exhaustion replaced by a new, calmer sense of purpose. I picked up my laptop. Sloan, Bennett said, a warning in his voice. It's over. You need to rest. It's not over, I said. The cancer is out. Now we have to fix the system so it can't grow back. I opened my email. I sent a new message to David Shaw, the Acting for His Life CEO. Subject: Northvale Policy. Governance, Path Forward. David, your next step. You will create a new, independent Employee Policy and Ethics Committee. It will be chaired not by HR, but by a rotating elected employee representative. It will have final, binding approval on all changes to the employee handbook, superseding HR and legal. This is the only way to restore trust. I expect to see the charter drafted by Monday. I will review it. Sam. I hit send. I knew he was at his desk, in the wreckage of his company, staring at his screen. The reply came in less than 30 seconds. One word. Approved. It was enough. It was the sound of a new foundation settling into place. I closed the laptop and leaned my head back. My gaze fell on the ultrasound photo, which Bennett had left on the mantel, propped up against a clock. The grainy black and white image, the tiny perfect spine. My mind flashed back, unbidden, to that restaurant, the yellow light, the cold glass, the smell of Sancerre, my mother's voice, give up the baby, my father's family standards. I looked at the memory. It felt distant. It wasn't a gaping, fresh wound. It wasn't a hot coal of anger. It was just small. It had lost its scale. It was a black and white speck of dust, a data point from a closed case file, archived and irrelevant. The grainy black and white photo on the mantel was the new reality. It was the only ledger that mattered. Later that evening, after I had slept for 3 solid, dreamless hours, I woke to find a fresh set of clothes laid out on the bed. Not a power suit, a pair of soft, worn denim maternity jeans, and a simple, incredibly soft, cream-colored cashmere shirt. Eleanor was in the hallway, reading a report. The shirt, I said, holding it. It was warm. It's cashmere. It's comfortable, she said, not looking up. She flipped a page. And it photographs honest. I stopped. I looked at the shirt. It was the same color as the suit my mother had worn to my execution, but this was soft, not sharp. It was warm, not sterile. My mother's suit was about optics. This was about honest. A small laugh, or maybe it was just an exhale, escaped me. Honest is the point, I said. Eleanor looked up from her report. For the first time, she smiled. It was a real smile, full of warmth and a fierce, quiet intelligence. Exactly, she said. I walked to the window. The grounds of Vale House were dark. The sun had set, and the manicured, Manic lights of the city were miles away. Here, there was just the deep, quiet dark of the woods. But the house itself was lit. Small, warm. Yellow lights glowed from every window. They weren't the harsh, accusatory spotlights of the boardroom or the cold. Yellow. Surgical lights of the restaurant. They were just lights, a beacon, not blinding, not exposing. Just bright enough to see the way home. The checks had all cleared. Ana Ramirez confirmed hers was the last. The 42nd account made whole. The ledger, as I had defined it, was balanced. So on Saturday morning, 2 weeks after the Transparency Day broadcast, we drove to the Grayford Town Hall. There was no motorcade, no security detail, just Bennett, driving his own quiet, dark gray sedan. The building was old, solid stone, with wide, worn steps and tall, narrow windows. It smelled of floor wax, old paper, and the faint, dusty scent of civic duty. It was a place of function, not performance. I had chosen a dress, not a gown. It was a simple, heavy, cream-colored wool crepe. It was sleeveless, with a clean boat neck, and it fell in a straight, simple line over the unmistakable, firm curve of my belly. I was not a bride hiding a secret. I was a woman arriving with her life, visible and whole. We walked in, our shoes clicking quietly on the terrazzo floors. The room we were directed to was not a chapel. It was a municipal office, paneled in dark wood, with a single, slightly faded American flag in the corner and a large, practical desk. Our witnesses were already there. Eleanor Vale stood by the window, not in a power suit, but in a simple, elegant teal dress. She was not the CEO of Vale Arcadia Group today. She was just Eleanor, Bennett's mother. Next to her stood Anya Sharma, the executive director of the Vale Foundation. She had been our legal counsel for the trust and was here as the official, required witness, a representative of the clean structural rules we had chosen to live by. And standing slightly apart, her hands clasped in front of her, was Ana Ramirez, the employee from shipping, the first of the 42 to message me. She wore her Sunday best, a neat floral print dress, and her eyes were wide, taking in the room. When I had asked her to come, she had simply cried and said, yes, she was here to represent the truth. There was no bride's side, no groom's side, no Mercer family to cast a cold shadow, no boisterous Vale relatives to claim a social victory. This was not a merger, it was a foundation. Bennett held my hand. The town clerk, a woman with kind, tired eyes and a simple pearl necklace, looked up. Are we ready to begin? We stood before her desk. Bennett's suit was dark blue, not black. He looked at me, his gaze steady, and the entire world outside the small, warm, wood-paneled room simply fell away. The clerk read the simple, secular text. The words were about partnership, about respect, about the legal and binding union of two people. They were plain words, practical words. They were the most romantic words I had ever heard. Please, the rings and your vows. Eleanor handed Bennett the ring. It was not a spectacle. It was a simple, heavy, platinum band. It felt cool on my skin. He slid it onto my finger. It felt solid, like an anchor. He spoke, his voice low and for me alone. I, Bennett, take you. Sloan, I will be your shield. I will be your structure. I will be the safe harbor. I choose you, and this life, with all my heart. I slid his ring onto his finger. I looked at this man who had asked me what I wanted, not what I should do, who had offered me a shield, not a contract, who had seen me as an expert, not a liability. I, Sloan, take you. Bennett, I said, my voice clear and steady. I will be your partner and your truth. I will choose light with you. Even when others weaponize it, I choose you, and this family, with all my heart. By the power vested in me by the state, the clerk said, smiling, I now pronounce you married. You may sign the register. There was no applause, just a shared breath of quiet joy. Bennett signed. his signature a strong, clear line. Then he handed the pen to me, a simple, black, government-issued ballpoint. I thought of the other document, the family standards, on its cold, cream-colored bond, waiting for a signature that would have annihilated me. I picked up the pen. My hand was perfectly steady. I signed my new name, Sloan Mercer Vale, a name I had not given up, but one I had added to, a name that was a choice. As I set the pen down, there was a sound, a quiet click whir. We turned. Eleanor was holding an old analog camera, a Leica. She smiled. For the private ledger. Ana Ramirez stepped forward, her eyes shining. She didn't hug me. She just put her hand on my arm, just for a second, a gesture of profound, shared understanding. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for being here." "Ana," I whispered back. The ledger was closed. We walked out of the quiet room, husband and wife. We walked down the hallway, our footsteps echoing, and out onto the wide, stone steps. The November air was crisp and bright, the sky a high, cloudless blue. Bennett opened the passenger door of the sedan for me. As I went to get in, I saw it. On the console between the two front seats, where a purse or a coffee cup might go, was a simple, clear acrylic box with a slot in the top. A label was taped to the front. Parental Leave Fund, matching today. I looked at him. He just smiled. "We have one more thing to do," he said. He didn't drive away. Instead, he took out his phone and mounted it on a small tripod on the car's dashboard. He angled it to capture both of us, sitting in the front seat, the town hall's stone pillars visible behind us. He hit a button. "We're live," he said. It was a 15-minute live stream, not on an investor portal, but on the public-facing page of the Vale Foundation. "Good morning," Bennett said, his voice easy and warm. "Sloan and I just got married, a few minutes ago, right here at the town hall." I held up my hand, showing the simple, solid band. "We don't need gifts," I said, picking up the narrative. "We have everything we need, but we wanted to use this moment to do what we did at North Vale, to set a new standard. For the past 2 weeks, the Vale Foundation has been matching, dollar for dollar, all public contributions to the new National Paid Leave Fund. We are in the last 15 minutes of that matching campaign." Bennett tapped the acrylic box. "This is our reception. We invite our community, our friends, and anyone watching to join us. Every dollar you give in the next 15 minutes, the Vale Foundation will match. The link is in the bio." We didn't say much else. We just sat there, in the quiet of the car, the sunlight streaming in. We let the camera run, and the comments began to roll in. It wasn't congratulations. It was action. "Ana Ramirez, $50. Thank you." Michael Broder, $100. "For my son." Northvale Act 41. Sarah Kay. Marketing, $200. Policy is people, 16 weeks. David Shaw, CEO, $10,000. Approved. Anonymous, 25. I was one of the 42. Thank you. The names scrolled past, one after another. Names that had been numbers. Names that had been rendered invisible by a line of code. They weren't anonymous anymore. They were here. They were present. They were donating what they could, claiming their place. My eyes welled up. This was our family. This was our community. I looked at the camera, my voice thick. "This," I said, "is the family we choose." The timer on the screen hit 0. The 15 minutes were up. Bennett leaned over and hit the end live stream button. The small red light blinked and went dark. He didn't say anything. He just unclipped the phone, put it away, and leaned over. He kissed me. Not a passionate kiss, but one of profound, quiet finality, a kiss on my forehead, a promise, a seal. My phone, in my lap, buzzed. A single, sharp vibration. I looked down. It was a push notification, a news alert from the Financial Wire. Northvale Systems, NVS, publicly releases full Kenswick and Rowe independent investigation report. Confirms all findings of previous administration. Adopts all proposed governance reforms. Stock up 3.2% in pre-market trading. The final echo. The full, public, permanent record. The truth. Released to the world at the exact moment my new life began. I dropped the phone back into my bag. I didn't need to read the report. I had written it. Outside, a light, cool wind blew across the town hall steps, rustling the bare branches of the trees. It felt clean. It felt new. Bennett started the car. The engine was a low, quiet hum. I reached across the console and took his hand. We didn't need any more words. We drove away. I returned to the Northvale headquarters 3 weeks later. I was not returning as an employee, but as the interim chair of the new Independent Governance Committee, there to sign off on the final structural changes. The lobby was unrecognizable, the air of quiet. Expensive fear was gone. The marble was the same, but the atmosphere was scrubbed clean. In the center of the atrium, where a looming abstract sculpture celebrating market share had once stood, there was now a simple, 7-foot-tall panel of backlit, brushed steel. The words engraved on it were the same words from the pin I had worn. Policy is people. Beneath it, in the space formerly occupied by an imposing black granite security desk, there was now a low open-plan advisory station with warm wood, comfortable chairs, and pamphlets. The small sign read, Parental Benefits and Wellness Advisory. A benefits specialist was sitting with a visibly pregnant employee, smiling, a stack of forms between them. I walked past the legacy wall. It was a long, digital screen that had, for my entire career, scrolled through the portraits of the company's founders and most powerful board members. My father's face had been on it, his name a permanent fixture. His name was gone. The Mercer Family Fund's shares had been bought out in the restructuring, absorbed by the Vail Foundation and redistributed into the employee-owned stock plan. The wall no longer showed portraits. It showed achievements. As I passed, the screen flickered and settled on a new, company-wide announcement. It was a simple, stark white slide with the Northvale logo. Announcing the inaugural Policy Integrity Award. Recipient, Sloan Mercer Vail, for her unwavering commitment to transparent governance and employee advocacy. It was not a trophy. It was a line item in a new ledger. It was a fact. A small, internal camera team, part of the new restructured communications department, approached me. A young woman, holding a microphone, looked nervous but determined. Ms. Mercer Vail? For the weekly internal bulletin, she said. You're here today to formally sign off on the new employee governance charter. It's the final step. Do you have any thoughts for the company on this new chapter? She was asking for a soundbite, a clean, PR-friendly quote to wrap everything up. She was asking for absolution. I didn't look at her. I looked past her, past the lights, and directly into the dark, round lens of the broadcast camera. I thought of the restaurant, the cold glass, the yellow light, the sound of my mother's voice. I knew who this was for. I knew they would be watching, from wherever they were, in their new, quiet, irrelevant life. You disowned me in private, I said. My voice was quiet, but the microphone was sensitive. It filled the atrium. The reporter's eyes widened. I let the silence hang for a beat, then I delivered the final line. I answered in public. I didn't wait for a follow-up. I nodded, once, to the camera operator, and turned away. On the massive, 40-foot monitor behind the advisory desk, the internal feed was live. My face, looking at the camera, was replaced. The bulletin cut to its next scheduled image. It was the grainy, black-and-white ultrasound photo, the one that had sat on my desk in the Vail Library. It was now the official icon for the company's Parental Wellness Fund. As the image of my child filled the screen, a sound chimed through the entire lobby, a single, pleasant, system-wide ping. It was the sound that had once announced the K&R audit. Now, it was the sound of the new payroll system. A caption scrolled beneath the ultrasound photo, visible to the entire lobby. Q4 parental leave. Restitution. Final disbursement complete. All 42 accounts paid in full, with interest. The sound of a closed book. The sound of a debt paid. Through the massive, floor-to-ceiling glass walls of the atrium, I saw the street outside. A familiar, dark graphite Bentley slowed, its brake lights flashing. It idled by the curb, as if the driver intended to stop. I saw the silhouette in the passenger seat, the distinct, proud shape of my mother's head. The car sat there for 1, 2, 3 seconds, a moment of profound, powerless hesitation. Then it accelerated. It merged sharply back into the midday traffic and was gone. I didn't turn my head. I didn't break my stride. I turned from the window. Bennett was standing just outside the main revolving doors. He wasn't inside. He was not on the legacy wall. He was not in the bulletin. This was my space, my work. He was just there, a shield, a safe harbor. He was not in the frame, and he never needed to be. He caught my eye through the glass. He nodded. Once, I nodded back. An entire contract, signed with a look. As I walked toward the entrance, a young man from the new legal team was struggling. He was holding the heavy glass door open with his back, trying to maneuver a new, high-tech baby stroller out onto the sidewalk. "Let me get that," I said. "Oh, Ms. Mercer Vale," he stammered, his face flushing. "Thank you. It's Sloan," I said. I took the door, holding it open for him. He and his wife maneuvered the stroller past me, out into the bright afternoon. My hand was still on the door, on the long, brushed steel handle. As I let it go, my gaze fell on the plaque mounted just beside it, the new, permanent steel panel. My hand rested on it, just for a second. My fingers brushed the cold, engraved letters. Policy is people. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Please drop a comment below to say hello and share your thoughts on the story. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. And if you want to help this story reach more people, please hit that hype button. We appreciate your support.